Hello and welcome to another thoroughly depressing episode of the Two and Under pod. If there's one thing worse than conceding a late equaliser to relegation rivals, it's looking at your watch and seeing that it's 2:50 a.m. or 3:50 a.m. if you're in Victoria. And you've been right up through the middle of the night and you're going to be woken up in 2 hours by a toddler. So that was my night on Saturday night. So I'm Jack, and with me to sift through the wreckage of yet another result thrown away is Craig and Bobby. It looks like the tsunami didn't get you on Saturday night, Craig, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see that you've had a shave.
Yeah, fresh-faced. Don't look like a bald egg on a barbershop floor anymore, which is good. But yeah, tsunami didn't get me, but the ash cloud, that came over Cairns today. Had a brilliant sunrise this morning, like a bright red, bright orange glow. It was fantastic.
Ash cloud from the volcano eruption just outside Tonga.
Yeah. It was over Cairns today. About 15k up into the sky, apparently.
How is Cairns still a place? All this stuff that happens.
Yeah, it shouldn't exist. It really shouldn't. But it's like one of those places when it's like the cockroach of the world. When everywhere else is dead, Cairns is still going to exist.
It'll just be Cairns and a load of cassowaries running around. Crazy.
The
Bobby, any ash clouds in Ballarat? Bobby, how are you?
Good, thanks, mate. No ash clouds, just dark clouds, mate. That's what we get here. Some snow. But today was 23 and sunny, so I'll take that.
Good stuff. Dark clouds over Ballarat, dark clouds over St James's Park, I think, after the weekend. So Newcastle have now thrown away 21 points from winning positions in the league this season, and we remain marooned on a solitary league win from 20 games. Really, it's quite amazing that we haven't been relegated already with stats like that. I think something with the way the league's gone this season is playing in our favour a little bit. But whatever bounce we might have hoped for to get from changing the managers definitely failed to materialise. And there's no question that we are staring down the barrel of relegation. And, you know, there are still 54 points to play for, which is encouraging. But when you can't even get 3 points at once, we can only do that once all season, it's not looking good. So we'll have a look a bit later at where the result leaves the club in the overall context of the season. But because I'm a very sick man, because we're all sick people who do this podcast, I want to go a little bit more in depth into the Watford game. So it was quite encouraging beforehand. You know, we had the war flags displays just keep on getting better and better. Joe Linton's got his own special flag now. We had Kieran Trippier and Chris Wood making their league debuts. We set up in a 4-3-3 formation. Alan St-Maximin gave us the lead after 49 minutes before Watford very, very deservedly equalised on 88 minutes. It's another late concession for Newcastle. And I don't think even sort of the most one-eyed Newcastle supporter would claim that we deserved to win that game. I think we were doing the watch-along, and I think we were pretty unanimous. There was us and everybody who was watching that we were struggling, that we were probably going to concede, and that we didn't deserve anything from the game, really. We had one shot on target in the whole game. Watford had 5 shots on target. So, Bobby, I'm going to come to you first. Really bad result. Terrible performance. What's your assessment of the performance from Newcastle on Saturday against Watford?
Shuddering. We were all up for it, as you said, before the game. We get Chris Wood in, a striker we needed. The War Flags display was absolutely elite. You know, you're talking Borussia Dortmund type standard, and, you know, how can you not be up for that? And then you get a performance from these players, a lot of them still with us from the championship, and I don't think they can lift their levels at all. I just don't think they've got it in them after that, and it's a big worry. We always seem to come up with a new problem area every week, so we needed a striker desperately. We got one, and now it's centre defence, but I reckon it's more our midfield as well. It was just totally anonymous in there, and Watford's last 10 minutes, I just think they had ample opportunities to kill the game as well, because Shelby and Longstaff were just nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, the midfield, like you said, it's funny because we desperately needed a striker. We got one. that kind of seemed to jump the queue and prioritise a little bit over central of defence. We've been chasing potentially unattainable targets at centre-back. I think the fact that we've got more than one fit centre-back probably plays into that as well. So we did have people who could play, even if they're not playing to the standard we hope they're going to. But like you said, I think we needed 3 or 4 players before this game. We still need 3 or 4 players in those same positions. Midfield was very, very poor. Shelvey, he's difficult. I remember talking on this podcast a while ago, and I said that I thought Shelvey was a lost cause. He's just a player that I just can't warm to. I don't think I'm ever going to. I know that it's his style that makes him look lazy. Maybe he's not lazy. I remember Steve Bruce once saying that he actually had the best running stats of any of the central midfielders in one game, which maybe says more about the other central midfielders than Shelvey. But he seems to have kind of reverted to type. He can go through spells where he plays well, and then he drops off. And he was poor the other day. Longstaff's slow. He doesn't seem to suit that position. The problem is we don't really have anybody else who can step in and play particularly well, I don't think. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, the midfield is a massive cause for concern right now. Shelvey, he's, like I said in a tweet earlier on today, he's a one-trick pony, and he's forgot how to do that trick. He's not the player he was when we first signed him, albeit that was a good couple of years ago now. Was it 5-6 years ago this transfer window we got him now?
2016, I think.
Yeah, so it'll be 6-7 years now then maybe.
Yeah, 7 years maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it was the winter transfer window we got him. He's just rapidly gone downhill. Longstaff is a shadow of the former player he was once promised to be. He's just too slow. He's got the turning circle of a yacht. I don't rate Sean Longstaff anywhere near as much as I once did. I think we all rated him quite highly at one point. But yeah, he's playing for a new contract. And with performances like that, he'd be lucky if he'd get one for Whitley Bay. I just don't see how anyone thinks he's Premier League quality. The 2 wide men, if you want to call them wide men, in St. Maximin and Fraser, ASM gave away the ball far too much in that first half. Every time he got anywhere close to anyone trying to do a little trick flick, back heel, whatever, they were just disposed straight away. And then they're on the counter-attack, leaving us heavily exposed. And every time we were against on the counter-attack, I always thought we could have conceded. We never looked like we were calm or comfortable in defence, but that's been the story since day one of the season.
I just want to touch on St. Maximin because I was just watching him in that first half. I was getting so frustrated because we were saying when we were watching it, he's talented. He's in the team because he can go and do something like score a goal out of nothing, which he then went and did 4 minutes after half time. I sent a tweet out at half time and it just said St. Maximin is annoying me. And he was annoying me. And then I'd reverse jinxed him. So he came up and did what he does, nicked the ball, and he scored a really good goal. But is it worth... We don't have many other options at the moment, but is it worth having a player in the team like that who is very hot and cold, he's hit and miss, he's going to do nothing, but then he's going to pop up, and he's one of the only players we've got who can actually score a goal at the moment? What do you think, Bobby?
In a perfect world, no. I think we've seen, and I mentioned this on one of the early podcasts about St. Maximin being a watch and see. When there's a system that needs to be played both offensively and defensively, and he's got to fit into this system, he goes missing, and he's shown it in his past as well. And it's why he hasn't got the big moves, for his unbelievable highlight reel and unbelievable talent. There's no big clubs knocking at his door. So in a perfect world, no, but we're not in a perfect world at Newcastle. We need his goals or his threat of goals to get us out of it. And I just think when we went with the 4-3-3, I don't think it suits us at all because ASM out wide, it's never worked. Can't remember a time where it has worked. He needs to be playing just behind the striker to utilise him the best way and not have him do all these tricks and turns on the side and then lose the ball. So, look, there's a lot of issues and a lot of red flags up at the moment. And he's probably, people will be listening to this going, oh, come on, he's not even our worst issue. There's more things to discuss. But unfortunately, he's just part of a bank of issues that are costing us at the moment.
But on the flip side of that, if we didn't have him, he scored against Man United, he scored against Watford, he scored against the equaliser against Brentford. So he's one of our only players who can actually score a goal. So there's issues absolutely ravaging throughout this team. And if he can be utilised properly, is a very useful player. And he's funny on Twitter as well, which is good news for the fan base. He's some of the stuff he does on Twitter is absolutely amazing. But in terms of a serious, if you want talking about building a squad and building a team, it's difficult to see where he kind of fits in the long term. And you can see why he likes Steve Bruce so much, because if Steve just said, just go out and play, just go out and do your thing, and indulged him, which he did seem to do, then players are going to like that, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, especially with any player with an ego, allowed to do what he wants to do on the football pitch. I don't think Steve Bruce had any tactics, so there was no fitting into a system. It was just go out there and enjoy, boys, and do what you can do. Yeah.
And I think we are going to talk about Eddie Howe later as well, because he's been copping some criticism lately, which is fair enough. But it did seem worryingly a little bit like he was using the kind of tactic of, let's just try and give it to St. Maximin and hope he can do something. I really was worried about our lack of attacking cohesion against Watford. What did you make of Chris Wood, Craig, and his debut? It was quite a quiet one.
He was. I think Chris Wood benefits from having somebody quite next to him, quite close to him, sorry. And I think he had ASM who was too far away, and same with Fraser as well. When you get those little knockdowns, they weren't close enough to pick up the ball or anything. He was also crowded out every single time he got anything close to being on the ball. So I can't really put any follow on there. And he had 2 days training as well. So I'm not going to have any digs or anything at Chris Wood. I just think he was thrown into the mix, not necessarily too early, but he just didn't have enough time to get the game plan or anything like that. And time will tell whether he can click with Fraser and St. Maximin, if they can squeeze together as a more compact three to pick up those knockdowns, those loose balls and everything, because that's where it's going to be critical for us, them three working together, especially over the next 6 weeks with Wilson being out.
When I was watching the highlights of Chris Wood's goals for Burnley, it really struck me. I think there was about 50 goals, 55 goals, and there was a highlight reel of every single one. And it really struck me how he linked up with Dwight McNeil. And Dwight McNeil's not necessarily a player I've paid that much attention to. I know there was a lot of noise around him a few years ago, but it was really quite intriguing the way that Chris Wood benefited a lot from having him out there, feeding him. And it's a very clear system that Burnley had. So it's kind of like a very rigid 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1 with Dwight McNeil out on the left. And that's not the system that Newcastle are going to play. We do have Kieran Trippier who can put a decent cross in. But yeah, I don't think we can judge Chris Wood on that performance. I think we saw some of his hold-up play, which is going to be useful. But just like Trippier, he's probably sitting here wondering what he's signed up for here and what he's got himself into.
I'm sure the bank balance doesn't. When he gets his first paycheck, he's going to be okay after that. But I thought Chris Wood was okay. Like I think he'll provide something for us. We didn't sign him to score 30 goals in a season. He's going to offer something, but again, it's about the system we play and having no wideman. I suppose Fraser can a little bit, but who can take a man on, knock it wide, and then cross a ball in. ASM isn't going to do that. So Chris Wood's in the box. I've noticed it a few times where he was waiting for the ball to come in and it just wasn't coming in. So there's obviously some tinkering to be done with the formation now that Chris Wood's in the team and who to play, who not to play. But I don't see anyone on the bench or in reserve that's going to come on and make a difference in that anyway. So, yeah, lots to think about. One shot on target at home against Watford tells you that the defence copped a battering on Twitter after the game, but that's a big problem area too.
In terms of the defence, kind of that they make individual mistakes all the time. They make terrible errors, schoolboy errors every game. Lascelles did one that he kind of got away with. He basically did what Kieran Clark did against Norwich, but he did it further up the pitch, and he got away with that. I think he got a yellow card on that occasion. And then Watford's goal was just kind of wise. There was all sorts of issues that went on in the build-up, including an absolutely appalling example of game management where Dubravka, for some reason, it was as if we were losing and he had to get on with the game quickly. Lee was pointing this out on the watch along, but what is going on with this? The game management is just non-existent. It's terrible. I don't know. Do you think there's some kind of mental block here? Because my take on this is that this is a team so down on confidence. It's down on quality in the defensive areas. Is there a mental block going on here where there obviously is, because we get ahead and we can't hold on to results. But what do you think, Bobby, is the main problem here that's causing us to do this week after week?
We need a psychiatrist, sports psych, into the building to talk. I think they're mentally blown. A lot of these guys that have been at the club for a long time, I think they know the writing's on the wall for them as well. And it's probably a hard thing to come to training, hear what we're hearing. I mean, as fans, we're getting frustrated with all the new names being linked. But imagine being a player and you're a centre back and you got all these names being linked, or you're a centre midfielder and you got all these names being linked and of elite quality, and then you've got to go out in front of 50,000 fans and try to perform, knowing it's going to be the end soon. So I think there's a lot of this stuff that's happening, and I think that's just causing the issues. But it was actually in my notes about the game management. It just blew me away. Like Bradford to just get the ball going and get it on was shocking. And I think a couple of the players are checked out. Like Almiron, when he came on, he's a zippy player, high fitness level, pace. That goal, it was his man that crossed the ball in that he let go. And there's vision of him and Dummett in that little sequence, and Dummett beat him to that man. Now, that should not happen. He was a fresh man. So I think there's some players that have just mentally checked out of the club. So, yeah, a lot of issues here, and it's depressing, really, when you keep being on a podcast and bringing it back up again. I thought I was getting over it, but yeah.
I know, yeah, sorry. and then you've got Jamal Lascelles getting out jumped by a guy who's 6-7 inches smaller than him, and it's just kind of basic defensive things that are going on. It was a really good cross, don't get me wrong, but there was obviously a lot of our fault in the build up to that. But then your captain, he's not in good form. He's been a good player for Newcastle over the last kind of 8 or 9 years. But we can't have these defensive errors every game and expect to win games. We were on the watch along, and Newcastle was sitting back. So as soon as we scored, we were all just starting to get worried about it. We lost control of the game in the midfield, and I don't believe that Eddie Howe said to them, "You need to sit back now. Let's hold on to this." It's not in his managerial style or his makeup to do that. So to me, that just shows that this is a ingrained kind of culture of fear among the players. And maybe I know we've talked a little bit privately about this as well, but maybe it's the kind of pressure of playing at St James's Park as well. When you get that such good support like that, it maybe adds an extra layer of pressure. Craig, what do you think about the kind of Newcastle's game management and the result of sitting back the way they did against Watford?
Well, it's not just Watford we've done that with. It was against Burnley. We got very lucky against Burnley because they had a goal disallowed as well, if I remember rightly. It was rightly disallowed, but again, they still had the ball on the back of the net. And I don't care how good your team is defensively, at 1-0, you're always vulnerable. Regardless whether you're at Real Madrid, Juventus, whoever, there's still that chance that the opposing team can get a corner, whip it in, and you're back at 1-1. And that's the thing I don't understand is why aren't we going for the kill? The momentum is with us. We've got the goal. We've got the advantage. They have to come out and attack us now so we can get them on the counter. We've got the pace up front to get the counter, and we've got a striker up there now with Chris Wood. Why didn't they just go for the kill? And it just really, really infuriates me. I think maybe that's what Dubravka had in mind when he released that ball early. Right, let's get them on the counter, possibly, but it just didn't work. It failed massively, and the biggest backfire you could ever ask for. But it's just the mentality now: sit back, protect the lead, and be done with. But that comes from Steve Bruce. You look at the times when we'd go surprisingly 1-0 up in a game and we wouldn't have another shot on target for the rest of it. Or if we would, it would just be from 25 yards out and a trickling off the keeper. It's just something that they need to get out of their mindset. When they go for this break, whether it's in Portugal, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, they need to come back with a fresh mind. They need to come back as a new team. Let it be their pre-season. Let it be their whichever. And if they come back with the same mentality that they're already down, that they're already defeated before they even step onto the pitch, then we might as well not even bother watching because it's so soul destroying for every single supporter out there. That's not the Newcastle United we grew up watching. I mean, unlike yourself, we grew up with the entertainers and everything like that. There is no way Keegan would tell his team, yeah, let's just go for a 1-0 win and sit back. And you're absolutely right with Eddie Howe. It's not in his game style. It's not in his mentality. He does not want to see us play boring defensive football. Attacking football is his thing. It's his niche effectively. And the quicker those lot can get into that, buy into that system, then we've got a chance. But I'm so angry still, so frustrated. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I had a rant there. I do apologise, but yeah, they need to buy into it and buy into it quick, or else we are down.
Everyone was feeling so much better, and I've just dragged everyone down again. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Jack.
Bobby, any final thoughts on this game before we move on and talk about something else?
No, look, I think we've covered it. I saw on the vision Eddie Howe trying to tell the boys to push up, so it was definitely not him. There's deeper issues at the club. I think Dex has been big on this as well when he mentioned about the mentality, and it's a squad that's broken at the moment. The early high spirits that had when Eddie took over is sort of dissipated, and that sort of says to me there was deeper issues, underlying issues previously, and it's just the honeymoon sort of worn off, and now it's they're coming to fore and all these different changes and everything that's going on. So I just see massive issues here, and I'm hoping that they can get a couple of signings in before Leeds. Watching Leeds against West Ham, I don't like our chances, but hopefully a few signings can come in and they're big players and hopefully can change the mentality of the group.
I think if Eddie didn't realise the scale of this job, I think he did, but I think even more so, I think every day he's learning. He knows which players he can trust. He's learning who he needs to get rid of, but he's working at the moment with an arm and a leg tied behind his back, isn't he? Effectively, he's trying to make the best of what he can. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about Eddie Howe in the next section. He's been getting a little bit of grief, and we're gonna just talk sort of generally about where this leaves Newcastle and the current sort of mood and atmosphere around the club. So we'll be back after this. Okay, so let's get into this, lads. So frustration has been building within the fan base a lot because of recent results, which happens at any football club, and also because of some kind of slower than ideal progress in the transfer market. The owners are under scrutiny now, which again comes with the territory. That's fair enough. There's definitely a blame game going on about who or what exactly is responsible for the mess that the club finds itself in at the moment. Most people would probably agree that there's one reason or one main man, which is why we're in this mess. But sort of keeping on talking about that isn't going to move things forward at the moment. We can definitely all agree on whose fault it isn't that Newcastle are in this mess, and that's the supporters. Because the backing that the team has had at St James's Park, the backing that they've had on social media has been absolutely astonishing. Nothing short of incredible since the takeover happened. Who gets 52,000 for a cup game at home against a League One team? You know, it's just every time you see it, it's just it really. I was brought up in Newcastle, born around there, and it still staggers me the extent of the support that this club gets. I remember when Newcastle got relegated to the Championship last time. We had the first home game was against Reading. Shola scored a hat-trick. I was at that game. There was 45,000 or something at that game even, you know. It's just, it kind of is taken for granted a little bit, maybe sometimes, but we shouldn't brush over the absolute support that this club is getting and the support that Eddie Howe is getting, that the new owners are getting. So the fans are doing an incredible job, and that's what they'll do, and they'll continue to do that. But Craig, whose fault is it that Newcastle are in this position?
Two people, Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce. I think everyone would be unanimous with that as well. I'm not going to say Eddie Howe is totally free from any criticism because he's not. Nobody is. But yeah, for me, and I think we all agree on this, Steve Bruce should never have been appointed in the first place. He was never the right man for the job. Just another one of Mike Ashley's yes men. But start of the season, we could all tell that the players weren't fit enough. They were slow, they were lethargic. Come to the 65, 70-minute mark, and they were all gassed out. They could barely run a few paces. And I think it was Wilson who actually came out in an interview and said exactly that as well. And he's just literally proved what we all thought 10 weeks ago when Eddie Howe first came in. And Mike Ashley, did he back him in the transfer window in the summer? No, he brought in a player that we'd already had in Joe Willock. So the team didn't improve. If anything, it went backwards because the level of fitness didn't improve. It wasn't a constant, if anything. It's those two things together. They have brought down this club to the level it's at now, where financially we are solid, but we're not an attractive proposition because of that. And that is affecting the transfer window right now, I do believe. January, as we know, is notorious for getting people in regardless of what club it is. But we're minted, but we're sat in the relegation zone. So, you're like trying to drive a Ferrari with square wheels. You're not going to get very far, or you're not going to go very fast. It's single-handedly those two men there. And I don't think anybody else would disagree with that.
Just on Steve Bruce, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here because, as we know, when he was sacked, there was a lot of dissenting voices towards that in the national media. And some of them make a fair point. Steve Bruce was our manager for 2 years. We avoided relegation fairly comfortably both times, although last season wasn't really comfortable until sort of towards the end of the season. But those can be difficult facts for Newcastle fans to face up to sometimes. What do you say to the argument? I'll ask you this, Bobby. What do you say to the people who point at the fact Bruce got similar points to Benitez and that Eddie Howe's the results haven't really improved since he came in from Steve Bruce? What do you say to that?
It is a good point. Like he did keep us up, but I think he was left. He got left a squad and a fitness base and everything by a world-class manager. So he came into it at a really optimal level, and we saw it decay over his 2.5 years that he was there, and he left it in a really bad state, and poor Eddie's had to come in and clean it up. And you just can't have professional players playing in the richest competition in the world being not fit enough. because every other club will be, and at their optimal level. And all these facts about, keeping us up after 2 years, a lot of it you could see was we had one really lucky year. Every result was go. We didn't know how we won every other week. It was like, how did we win that? And then a lot of it was down to the defending because of the systems and all that he inherited. But he refused to train the players enough. He took that much leave. The players would train 3 days a week. He'd go on holidays. When there was players there was only 2 international players in the squad. So, I mean, there's a lot to uncover and a lot that we don't know about as well. But anyone who says that Steve Bruce didn't leave this club in a mess doesn't know what they're talking about. And Mike Ashley, the underinvestment over 14 years is what you get. I read something on Twitter that on the weekend we had 7 players from our championship team and Villa had 0. That tells the tale. How can we compete? It's just not fair.
That was from a game where we played Villa, wasn't it, in 2015, 2016, I think it was, or 2016, 2017. And it was a game against Villa we played. We had 7 of the players from that squad in the squad for the game the other day. And Villa didn't have any in their squad. So you feel like a bit of a broken record just banging on about this. And we don't want to be talking about Mike Ashley and we don't want to be talking about Steve Bruce. And probably 2 of the last people we want to be talking about. But when we're talking about the current state of Newcastle United, the new owners have been here for 3 months. Eddie's been here for even less. It's impossible to talk about the current problems that they're facing without talking about Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce. And for me, personality and character is a really massive factor for a Newcastle United manager. It's probably a big factor for managers of any club. You want to identify with your manager and you want it to be a person you can get behind, Benitez had that. He had the CV, he had a lot of credit in the bank, and he worked hard. Eddie Howe works hard. He's so diligent. You just know that he's putting absolutely everything into it. That alone is not an attribute for being a top manager. You need more than that. I believe Eddie Howe's got more than that. I think that if we saw him having a full pre-season with the players and being able to sign his own players, which, by the way, Steve Bruce was able to sign his own players one summer. I think if we saw Eddie Howe in that position, instead of just having 10 games taken over this squad, I think he would be doing a lot better than what he is. As we keep saying, he's inherited a mess. He hasn't had any luck whatsoever either. And he's been hamstrung by individual errors from his defence. I don't even think it's necessarily structural problems. It's just bad individual errors that have come up short. So we're talking about Steve Bruce. I'm talking about Eddie Howe now, but I'm so far behind. I've got so much support for Eddie Howe, and I think I will do, and I think the fan base does as well. I understand that he's going to get criticised. I think we were saying the other day, he needs to do something about this midfield. He did that 15 minutes too late, perhaps. He's made mistakes in team selection. His margin for error is absolutely minute because of the situation he's been left with, and because of the quality of his players. So I understand that he's going to get a bit of criticism. Any manager does. Managers live and die by results, but I think there's so much more context to take into account here for why the team are not winning games, and I don't think he's a major part of that. But it's football. He's going to get criticised for it. What do you think?
I think we're talking about 2 different things in a lot of ways sometimes, and I think we can criticise some of his decisions, and that's fair. I think it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, Benitez was a god at his time in Newcastle, but there was elements that he'd criticise, not making a sub till the 73rd minute you think, oh, but there's got to be reasons for it. But then on the flip side, I think he's got the unwavering support of everyone as the manager and the long-term manager at Newcastle United. So I think they're two different things. It's all right to criticise someone about their performances in a way that is factual and, you know, whatever like that. But for people that are calling Eddie Bruce,
please no,
Eddie Howe, to be gone or being replaced, or they don't have faith in him, or he's not the right guy, that's just nonsensical. It's just not right. It's just a lack of understanding what he's inherited. And I agree with you, Jack, in the fact that he's so hardworking. He's so different to what we've had in the past, and his character is someone that you want to have represent the club. So 100% fully behind him. And I think majority of fans will be too.
Craig?
Yeah, completely agree. I'm all for Eddie Howe. I think a lot of people would have chosen Eddie Howe if, say, Ashley had have been sacked and there was no takeover. He would have been a fan's choice, I would have thought, just because of, again, his work ethic. He's young, he's English, he's an upcoming manager, and I know a lot of people call Steve Bruce a bit of a dinosaur, which I'm probably guilty of doing it myself. I think Steve Bruce's time has come as a manager. Maybe he should retire, maybe not. But I think getting someone fresh and like Eddie Howe, who I think he took a year off and he went to study Atletico Madrid. He spent time with Diego Simone over there, learning his ways. And there's not many better coaches in world football to learn from than him. So he's not as if he took a year off just to sit on his backside watching TV. He went out to learn, improve himself, and that just shows his hunger. And it's what we want. We want a manager that will go out there and he'll study formations, he'll study tactics, and there's another word that Bruce didn't like, tactics. He'll do his homework. Sometimes that homework will pay off. Sometimes it won't. You're not going to win every game. We're not going to win 2 at this rate. But you know, I'm happy for Howe. I think he's the right man for the job. I really do, and I hope he's there for a good few years to come.
So that's Eddie, that's Mike Ashley, that's Steve Bruce. There's 2 other kind of groups of people that I want to talk about here that have been coming in for some stick. So the first group is the players. The players, I think, are widely acknowledged are not very good. Most of them will not be here in a couple of years, regardless of what division we're in. The squad has been neglected, as we've already highlighted. How much do you blame the players? It's really difficult, this, isn't it? Because there's a lot of grey areas and a lot of factors that play into it. But Bobby, do you blame the players for this situation? And if so, to what degree?
It's a tough one. I think it's hard to read what the mentality is amongst the playing group. To see a guy like Lascelles, who, when he got given the captaincy, it's because he went into a change room and didn't he pin Yanma up to a wall against Southampton and tell him what's what as a young kid. And to see this version of Jamal Lascelles now, do we blame him, or is he is this the outcome of circumstance? It's what's happened, in the past 2.5 years. So I don't want to go hard at the players. They're just not good enough. But is that their fault that they're still here? It's not Mike Ashley's fault. It's definitely Mike Ashley's fault. He didn't invest, so we had to keep the players that aren't Premier League quality, especially not at a club like ours, around. And I think it's hard to do. I will criticise some players that are just not giving their all. Like I've basically written off Almiron after his cameo on the weekend because he just dawdled. And for a guy coming off the bench to provide energy, he just didn't want to be there. So when I see things like that, I'll have a go at some players, but to blame the collective is a bit hard and a bit harsh, I think.
And I was talking to Dexter on Twitter about this as well. It's hard to quantify effort levels in players because players have all got different styles and they play differently. unless you've got somebody like Michael Owen, who clearly just doesn't give a toss, and he's just there to try to hopefully not get injured so he's out for England, you know. It's hard to quantify effort levels in players. I think that this group have generally been committed, generally been hardworking. I just don't think they're good enough. And I think that we do need reinforcements badly. So that's where I'm going to come on to the last group who have started to cop a bit of criticism, and that's the owners, or probably more specifically, Amanda Staveley and Merdad, and potentially Jamie Rubin as well, the guys who have got their management contract for running the club. So we've brought in 2 players, good signings. They've spent the money they had to spend on those 2 necessary signings, but we're halfway through January. We don't have centre backs. We don't have a midfielder. We don't have a left back that they're all chasing. The January transfer window is notoriously difficult. Chris Waugh was explaining this to us in more detail when we spoke to him. And I think something that is a problem as well is that we don't have a director of football in place, and we don't have a chief executive. So from the outside, it could look potentially like Newcastle are doing things slowly, that the owners are not moving quickly enough, maybe that they don't appreciate the scale of the job that they're doing, and they don't have the people in place. I don't think their commitment is in doubt to it. I think they clearly want to do what they can, but there's question marks over the speed they're doing things, and potentially over the structure of the club, which could be hamstringing our attempts at strengthening the squad this month. Craig, any thoughts on that?
I'm with you on how notorious the January transfer window is. It's crazy bad. Sir Alex Ferguson said a good number of years ago now, you don't get good value in the transfer window. And when you're in a club in our position, where you're sat in the bottom 3, you've got X amount of millions in the bank, clubs know you're loaded, they know you want the players, they're going to hold you for ransom, and why wouldn't they? I would expect us to do the same if it was the other way around. You're going to want the highest possible price you can get for, but they're not going to be taken for mugs. And that I can actually commend them for, to be honest, because they could turn around to a club and say, okay, what's the price for this player? 60 million. Okay, there you go. And every club would then do the same to us. We would be taken for granted every single time. And again, I think the progress is slow, but nobody else is signing 2, 3, 4, 5 players right now. We're not the only ones that are having this issue, and we are the only ones in the bottom half of the table that have spent close to £40 million already. I do think we'll get more players in, hopefully 1 or 2 before Leeds. Definitely new centre back is a priority. A new midfielder, that is another priority. I think we all said 6, 7 weeks ago, a new spine of the team is what's needed. And I do think we will get them. I think they are working in the background. Luke Edwards said not so long ago that 2 deals are very close. How close is close, nobody really knows. But if they're in before Leeds, it can only have a positive effect. And we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I get the criticism on the owners, but it's their first ever transfer window. It's a January transfer window, and it's a very unique situation we find ourselves in. And I'm pleased with what we've done so far. Could be better, absolutely. We could have said no one. And anyone thought about that one? I'm happy with it. What about yourself,
Bobby? I'm going to come to you just on the structure of the club as well, because we've been talking about Dan Ashworth for a while. We heard a little while ago about Michael Emenalo. There's a few reports today that potentially Peter Kenyon could be in line for a chief executive position. So the nufc.com reported yesterday, I think it was, that Nicky Hammond, who was the guy who came in to kind of try and help with the transfer situation, that he left his job after a week, something like that. George Colkin and Chris Waugh wrote an article for The Athletic today where they name-checked Nicky Hammond, but they don't seem sure whether he's still there or not. What's your take on the executive kind of situation, and do you think somebody should have been appointed by now?
I know in terms of a permanent person. I think they're doing the right thing by taking their time to get the right people. They've had to do it backwards, as that article in The Athletic, and I encourage you, if you've got a subscription, to read it, because it points out a lot of things that made me feel better about the club. But in terms of Nicky Hammond, that was a big surprise for me. That was he was brought in to deal with the agents and to deal with the contracts and to deal with these little intricacies that our owners don't have any experience of. And you hear that after 7 days he was gone. So whether they thought, oh, look, we'll be able to handle this, we don't need to pay you the fees that you're going to get, or what, who knows. But it's a worry, to be honest, because I think the Chris Wood deal was really smart in the fact that we probably overpaid, but Burnley had no choice but to release because we activated a release clause. And I would have expected that we would have had a few more of those lined up prior to the Watford game, particularly like the defence. A lot of players around Europe do have those in their contracts, and some of them aren't very high or around what you'd buy them for anyway. So that's where my frustration, it's not a frustration, it's a concern, I suppose, that Jamie Rubin, Merdad and Amanda don't have any experience in doing this. And it's an area especially with the influx of agents, that you need the experience of dealing with them. So the concern is who is actually dealing with these people, and what are they being taken for a ride, or are they being, told one thing to waste a few days, like the Botman deal and a few other things. And that's my concern with what's going on, because there's no one of expertise there. But in terms of the long term, no, we shouldn't hire a director of football now just because it's January, because he's got no time to put his feet under the desk anyway. So that's got to be a more long-term appointment.
And just briefly, Rafa Benitez has been sacked by Everton today. This is going to bring up a predictable kind of debate on Twitter or on social media or among the fan base about whether we would want Benitez back. I've tweeted about this already. My view on this is that I loved Rafa Benitez. I do love him. I think he's fantastic and he was perfect for this club at that time. But my take now, and maybe it's swayed by the two kind of most recent jobs he's had, which have not been successful. I think if he was still here when the takeover happened, it would have been fine because he would have stayed in position. But I certainly would not want to see him come back now at the expense of Eddie Howe. And I definitely wouldn't want to see him in some kind of director of football position, considering the fact he falls out with absolutely everybody above him, and he quite often falls out with players below him as well, as Lucas Digne being sold kind of 3 days before he's been sacked demonstrates, as well as how badly ran Everton are. So any of your opinions about this idea about Rafa potentially coming back, or should he come back, Craig?
Nah, that ship's long sailed now. I loved Rafa, like you said, when he was at Newcastle. Perfect fit. Very surprised when we got him, because he just wasn't a make Ashley type manager, to be honest. I think from his very first game right up to his last, he had the best interest of the club and the fans at heart, which we haven't seen for quite some time in a manager. And I hope wherever he goes next, I hope his next club is successful, but it shouldn't be, and I hope it isn't us.
Robbie?
Yep, echo those thoughts of both of you. Love Rafa. He's my king. He was unreal for us. It was like a dream when he was there to see him on the sidelines, but not now, and especially not as a director of football. We need harmony in that, and we need people with able to deal with people. But I wish Rafa all the success, and but not with us.
Okay, that's us out of time. I'm sorry for kind of depressing everybody with this podcast.
It was a bit of a depressing episode, wasn't
it? I feel miserable now. Really sorry.
Don't blame me if you tuned off after 5 minutes. Though, don't worry.
What can you do though? We've got I'm positive. I am still positive. I think, and this is kind of, I can be accused of having a defeatist attitude in saying this, but even if we get relegated, the club's still in a much better position if we get relegated than it was before the takeover happened. So I am extremely optimistic. I've been patient for 35 years of my life to try and see Newcastle be successful. So I can be patient for a little bit longer, even if that means a year out of the top division. I am very optimistic for the future, but it's hard to sometimes it's hard to be optimistic when you're up in the middle of the night watching Newcastle, watching Jamal Lascelles defend, or watching Dubravka throw the ball away or something like that. So I'm sorry about this podcast. I promise the next one will be more positive. We've only had one win to talk about in fucking 2 months. What can we do? But anyway, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at ToonUnderPod, and visit the website toonunder.com. We will be doing another watch along for the Leeds game at the same time on Sunday morning our time. The last one was really successful. We had 1,500 people watching at some point or another, so we're really pleased with that. That's kind of 5 times more than the last few we did, so we're really grateful for that. We love the interaction. We love the chat. We're on Facebook as well, Tune Under Podcasts. We're available on all the usual podcast platforms. And we'll be back later this week to get excited about the new centre-backs we're going to be signing, the new midfielders we're going to be signing, and the absolute guaranteed 3 points against Leeds United. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Craig. Please don't go and jump off a bridge or something.
Not yet.
Times are going to get better, I promise.
I hope so.
Cheers, guys. See ya.
Cheers later.
Yeah.